Hello everyone, welcome back to the Eternal Card Breakdown. My name is Em, and today we're going to be discussing the Dinosaur Nest nerf, as well as talking about the new promo card Martial Law. Apologize to people who saw a video up earlier with no sound. I have some sound card issues, and this one slipped past checks because I was working on multiple videos at the same time. Anyways, let's talk about Dinosaur Nest. So, this card has been nerfed a second time. The first nerf was taking the Dinosaur Nest transforming into Sheltered Valley from the third turn to the fourth turn, and the new nerf is that the card now gives Flying Charge and Overwhelm at random instead of Flying Charge and Killer. So in total, we have a card that's 2-cost Relic, start of your turn, play a 1/1 dinosaur with either Flying Charge or Overwhelm at random, and on your fourth turn, you transform it into a Sheltered Valley instead, which gives +2/+2 to each of your dinosaurs. Now, this card is generally a very strong value engine, and that's probably not likely to change. The thing that this really changes about the card is that it loses some of its interactivity, meaning that it's no longer going to pull a 1/1 killer dinosaur on the turn after it's played, and then kill some key combo piece like your Zoltan Ambassador in your hero decks, or that like Plunk Wumpkin that you've got set down and thrown. Basically, that means that the card is just less likely to high roll into a particular dinosaur that is more useful than the other ones. At this point, I think the most useful dinosaur is the 1/1 flyer, although the charge and overwhelm dinosaurs do occasionally have like a little bit of value. I think the charge one in particular is not particularly good just because it only does 1 damage on the turn that it's played and will never be a +2/+2 bonus unless you have multiple dinosaur nests down. Combined with overwhelm, this does mean that the cards generally have a lot more pressure over the course of a long period of time. They can attack pretty consistently. They have just like basically the same number of like useful skills for actually getting damage across, and flying and overwhelm together mean that you have 2 semi-evasive abilities for pushing that kind of damage. But the stated goal here is to remove the sort of bad feels that come from the Dinosaur Nest playing multiple killer units, or even just the 1 killer unit at the exact right time, and messing with your strategy from just a 2-cost relic perspective. Overall, I think this card's still really strong. I think it still sees a lot of play. I think that its general like behavior with dinosaurs is pretty good, but removing the interactivity from it does make a lot of sense, considering that a relic that makes units should probably not also be a removal card. So overall, very, very happy with this change. I don't think it's a particularly bad nerf. I think that Overwhelm is a useful skill as well, and that like most dinosaur decks still want to use this. If you want to use this in dinosaurs at the end of Dinosaur Nest series of nerfs, I think that's the point where it's a win. If it's still a pushed like standard card and something that like actually sees a lot of play in other types of decks that are not dinosaur focused, I think that's still fine, and certainly not unreasonable. It's more a question of whether or not the card becomes way too prevalent in the meta, and whether or not the answers for it are just not simply good enough, and you can't like actually get your win rate up high enough when playing against this type of card. So overall, yeah, this looks like a positive change. We'll see how it shakes out in the general Throne and Expedition meta, but I think it should make something of a difference to Dinosaur Nest's overall strengths, and in particular, I'm happy to be playing hero decks again with 1/1 Zoltan Ambassadors. All right, the other card that we're going to be getting into is Martial Law, the new promo card from Wednesday. It's a 7-cost quadruple green that has choose a non-green faction and kill all units of that faction. So effectively a one-sided board wrath, since you can pick any color that isn't green and then blow up almost all of those units, except that, of course, if your opponent has 2 different cards of 2 different colors, say a mono blue unit and a mono shadow unit, then you will not be able to kill both of them. So notably a little bit fickle, definitely not always reliable for doing the one thing that it's best at doing, which is basically wiping out an entire board while you are ahead on board, and then attacking in with a bunch of your own justice units like your Hojins and your many, probably like 4/4s to 5/5s, your Furious Magnaventris, which of course at 4 is just like an absurdly strong card in green at the moment. So green generally has a pretty strong flavor for playing lots of just sort of well-balanced units and getting into board positions that are, I would say, a little bit weaker than some of the other factions on the board, just due to their general like sort of balanced nature. Like they tend to have equal health and equal power. They tend to be like reasonably well-statted, but maybe not as well-statted as some other things. They also tend to have like a lot of flyers, which also means that those typically are also a little bit weaker statted, which means that at a certain point in the game, they do do tend to get to a point where it becomes a little bit more difficult to trade. You start running out of finest hours, you start running out of saddle ups and other things like that. Probably not saddle ups because you're not in limited formats, but just general combat tricks become a little bit harder to come by. And as that happens, the board might slowly start to take over. So a card like Martial Law can really help in that respect, where instead of actually just harsh ruling the entire board, you get to basically just play a bunch of green units and then pick a color that's not green and decimate your opponent's board in a way that can be pretty happy. That being said, the card still costs 7. It is still pretty fickle in certain situations, and if you're in a mono-green matchup, the person with the least martial arts is the person who wins, not the person with the most martial laws. So basically that just means that if you are up against other green decks, this card is dead in hand, which can make it a really rough pick for an expedition format or for a throne format, because certain popular decks are going to be pretty heavily green, and if the deck gets popular in the meta, then people can choose to run more hybrid green units or more like green splash just to be a little bit more less vulnerable to it. And I think at the point where Martial Law is not picking up that many units, I mean, if it gets only 1 unit, I would say that's pretty bad tempo loss, particularly in Throne. But if it's getting like more than a couple, or if it's actually getting the full board wipe that you're looking for, then it's a little bit more worth going this deep on influence and this deep on power to generate just a particular benefit that you can actually play around with. I think that one-sided board breath effects are pretty reasonable. In terms of Throne, I would say this card has potential as both a market card and as a card in mono-green decks in particular. I think it's just very interesting in that respect, but I do think that the inflexibility of it makes it somewhat just unviable for tournament lists, and a little bit less effective than something like Leave a Witness or anything like that. It's just not likely to do the things that you most want to do, and in most circumstances you're more likely to have 1 unit standing than a full board standing that you need to protect with Martial Law, which makes it more likely that cheaper harsh rule effects, or even effects like Leave a Witness where you leave just 1 unit of your own alive, are going to be a little bit more handy. That being said, this can be a complete blowout, and sometimes you want to aim for that complete blowout, so it's certainly got some potential in that respect. Expedition-wise, I think this is significantly stronger. I think generally mono green is pretty happy with it, but I would say it's still just a little bit average. Like, you're paying 7 for an effect that, while it removes a lot of potential threats, is not always going to do the thing that you want to do, and your number of 7 drops is going to be limited for what type of deck that you can run. So you'll frequently want something that can win the game reliably, as opposed to something that can win the game only when your deck is green and your opponent's deck is not, and your opponent's deck doesn't contain multiple colors and multiple mono-colored factions in those colors, seeing as a hybrid setup would, well, a hybrid setup would actually make it a lot easier to kill all of their units. So, like, lots of hybrid colors or something like that, then Martial Law is better. But because there's so many, like, sort of different caveats that are based off of just what deck your opponent is running, I think that that is, like, something where it's a little bit less strong to pick, but still maybe a 2 of in certain lists, and something where you can actually like get good benefits out of it and use it to its maximum advantage. Still, expensive card, deep influence cost, pretty flaky on that respect. The one thing I will note about this card is that it is an excellent card for players who are building new decks. If you want to just build value green units, this is an excellent topper for that, and it's available for free, so I think that you could climb pretty high on an expedition ladder with a deck focused around Martial Law and just playing good green units from your pool. So something like that is, I think, really newbie friendly, and I always love it when we have these like promo designs where it's like, oh yeah, there's a really basic deck that you can build with this that doesn't require you to have a lot of like legendaries or rares. You just build good stuff, get up to Martial Law, play Martial Law, win the game. And like, that's kind of the thing where it's just like, ooh yeah, this is a new potential archetype that you can explore without breaking your own bank. And that's kind of a good thing to support, I think, in the weekly promos, since free cards being available for new players is always excellent. And yeah, I think this card functions more as a new player card than as somebody with a more advanced collection might really like, but I do think in Expedition there are particular uses for it, and in Throne, maybe as a market card, has a little bit of potential. And of course, we're not reviewing it in Limited because it's not in Limited. It's just a free promo card for people who play this week. All right, that is everything on these particular cards. I can hear construction noises starting up outside my window, which means it's time to end the video. Thank you all so much for watching. We have plenty of videos in the pipeline, so you'd be looking forward to daily videos for the next couple of days at least. I'm probably going to be recording a lot more, of course, and I'm going to be trying to extend that next couple of days to the next couple of weeks. So until then, I'm a Myriad. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Cheers!